views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening, Happy New Year, and welcome to Bronxtalk. Tonight we're going to do something that we've actually done 6 previous times, and that is take a look at our borough in ways that we have never really looked at it before. What we do every year, we talk to our friend Joe Raskin, who is wandering New York, not as we speak, but he does do it, I think, just about every day. And he takes some of the most wonderful pictures, not only of the other boroughs. We're, of course, interested in the Bronx, and you get a chance to see our neighborhoods like we have never seen them before. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at some of the photographs, and what we did this evening, we brought along an architect, a historian, who could take a look at our at Joe's photos and tell us a little more about them, so we know a little bit more about the borough of the Bronx. So let's introduce our guests and welcome our guests. Joe Raskin, Wandering New York. Nice to see you.
Hi, Gary. Nice to be here with you. Season's greetings to the people of the Bronx, as always.
And one day maybe I'm going to we'll take all the pictures. I mean, if we've done 8 or 10 a year, we're looking at 70 photos. Maybe we'll do like a special and run them all down. Anyway, I also want to introduce to you and also introduce to me and to Joe the principal of Gregory Dietrich Preservation Consulting. It is Gregory Dietrich. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
And Greg, by the way, is on the board of the Historic Districts Council. And when I called them and they said, "Oh, this is the guy you want to have on the show." So for New Year's, nice to have you with us, Gregory. So Joe, before we show some photographs, how often do you go out? Where do you go out? I mean, the pictures I see, from you are all over New York City, north, south, east, and west.
I just go where inspiration takes me every day. Lately, I haven't been able to because my health, but I'll go out to where I have an idea to go. And I very rarely go to see anything in advance. I have an idea. I pick out a place and I just get off the train or the bus and go from there.
You are a retired MTA guy. We've talked about that, and you love the subways. And so a lot of the elevated train stations you take pictures of. I've seen them of many of our Bronx stations. Do you hold the map of the city up and you throw a dart? Do you wake up and just say, okay, today I'm going to get on the E train or I'm going to get on the number 4 train? Or is there some science to it? I did the Bronx. Tomorrow I'm going to do Brooklyn, and I'm going to do Queens.
A little bit of everything. I don't go to sleep thinking where I'm going to be the next day, but at the same time, I very rarely I'll have an idea and then I'll go run with it.
And you spend how much time all day?
Couple of hours.
You are probably
what the weather's like.
You are probably an expert of every lunch counter in New York City, but that's another story. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
No.
Okay, fair enough. All right, are we ready to take a look at pictures? Let's get started. This is Wandering the Bronx. Joe Raskin, let's take a look at the first photograph. Here we go. Joe, you want to tell us where it is?
This is in Unionport. It's not. It's one of these things. I went out there without having any idea of where I would find, and there seems to be a number of houses like this in Unionport, not grouped together. Not so much in other parts of the Bronx or other parts of the city, but it seems like somebody went into Unionport with building these houses in mind.
This is like all of your photos. You could walk by there 1,000 times and never take a moment to take a look. When I think of Unionport, I mean, the first thing I think of is Parkchester. And when I saw the label, I said, "Oh, this must be a Parkchester photo." Gregory, what do you think? That is a picture of Unionport. It looks like row houses. You got an era. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, I would say if any one of these were a standalone house, that it could be taken for potentially a Queen Anne style building. That is with a very asymmetrical type of massing and different treatment of materials. What to me is sort of a character defining feature of this row are these turrets that have these pyramidal roofs. And you don't really see a lot of that in row houses in terms of repetition, but you might see one of those in a row of Queen Anne style row houses, which are really defined by the differences, and they're more whimsical in their architectural treatment.
Do we see those in other parts of the city, or is this really particular to Unionport or even the Bronx? And also, do you have a sense of what era they might have been?
Right. So I have not come across a row like this with these particular types of turrets.
Fascinating.
Repetitive like that. If I had to date them, I would say probably around circa 1885, because again, it feels like they're sort of picking up on the architectural vocabulary of Queen Anne style with this asymmetrical massing, and yet getting into colonial revival, which is how I would define the style.
Joe, I'm going to just make the assumption that they caught your eye because they caught your eye, and all of this history.
There's no other way to describe it. I went there not knowing I was going to find them, and I found them, and it was just an amazing sight. Especially, there's a couple of parts of the Bronx where you find one or two of them on a block. I've seen something like that in Woodlawn Heights. There's a couple of them in Van Ness, but not in a concentration like that.
Let's take a look at the second. Listen, we could talk about each one individually for a half hour, but let's take a look at the second one, which is another type of row house. And Joe, you want to tell us where this is? I know where it is because it's not far from where I live.
This is on Heath Avenue in Kingsbridge. It's just like I went by there. I've seen them from a distance. I just didn't go by them before, and I found them. And the used a little bit of a telephoto effect on that just to get the compression of it.
So go ahead, Gregory. You have the floor. These are row houses, but a lot different.
Yeah, and first I just want to compliment Joe on his perspective. I think it's a great view of this row to give you a sense of the rhythm of these houses. These are squarely in a colonial revival vocabulary, especially with these Tuscan columns, which are largely defined by rather squat, bulging, classically inspired columns. And then you have the entablature with the dentils, which are those little block-like elements forming the cornice of these porches. Up above, you've got the red brick. That is textbook colonial revival. And then you've got what appear to be cast stone or concrete cast lintels on the houses. I think they're a wonderfully intact row. I mean, they really shine.
They really do shine. And I have actually walked by there a number of times. And I said, wow, look at this. And then sure enough, I get the photograph from Joe Raskin. All right, let's just keep moving along because there are so many photos. Let's see. This one, I have to tell you, Joe, the architecture is just spectacular. And of course, the way that you shoot them shows us the unusual shape. Talk about where this is.
This is in Belmont. This is by Crescent Avenue, I think by East 187th Street. It's an odd thing. It seems to be fairly distinctive for the area, even for the Bronx. But the architectural design seems to be familiar. It's familiar to me from other boroughs. In this case, this is one that you find. This is type you find them in parts of Brooklyn, parts of Queens. but not like this. This is it's like it was the inspiration for it, and it just like it caught my eye. I just waited for the right time, the right moment to get the shot.
When you say the right time, the right moment, that means no cars in front of it, or you wait for certain lighting.
Fewer cars, fewer people.
Right. Well, there you go, Gregory. I've already indicated that, and I don't know what the technical name is for what's up on top, but boy, to have created that, you have to really care about. I mean, nowadays we build them like this, it's spectacularly beautiful.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the original cornice is no longer there. Because I would describe this building as everything but the kitchen sink in terms of styles, including its irregular footprint, which is really rather interesting as well. But if we could pull up the photo again,
go ahead.
Through. So you've got on the first two stories the horizontal banding, which is a Renaissance revival of Renaissance motif. And then when you get to the upper stories, you've got those blocks that are running vertically. For instance, in the right side, flanking the four windows, you've got those blocks. That's called coining, and that is a Georgian motif.
Oh, what motif did you say?
Keyed lintels over the windows, splayed, meaning, of course, like this, keyed with keystones. That is also a colonial revival motif that you see quite a bit.
Wow. We lost, Gregory, we lost the word. What did you say the motif began with a G?
On which element?
I think it was the second. Georgian. Okay.
Yes, Georgian.
So this building, it sounds to me like you think it might have been redone periodic, like through different periods.
It's interesting. I had a professor who said that most of the buildings in New York City are vernacular. That is, they don't adhere to a particular single style, but often reflect transitions between styles. And so I think that this building actually does represent how it was originally designed, although the storefront we see has been somewhat altered. And then you've also got the missing cornice. But otherwise, in terms of the facade that we're seeing, that would be original. And the last element is along the uppermost story, you've got those arched windows, which really speak to the Romanesque style, so Romanesque revival.
Wow. So it's
what I have to add is that this is so typical of architecture in the Bronx, is that it takes advantage of the land, the real estate. It's not other areas. You probably see more rectangular or square shape, but here they always take advantage of it.
This is what Gregory was talking about, the footprint, the unique footprint.
Yeah, really.
Let's let's go to the next one.
Sure.
This is Morris Park. It's just a lovely little house, and again, it takes advantage of the real estate. It's a curved corner, and the house takes advantage of that curve there.
Gregory, do you think that this was? I guess it was created after the streets were laid, to fit in that spot. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would put this in the arts and crafts camp because of the ornamental brickwork, and you've also got some medallions also. The diamond-shaped bricks, that's sort of a hallmark of the style that you see in the parapet area.
Oh, there they are. Yeah.
And then also you've got this pedimented and stepped parapet itself, which all sort of speak to that particular style during the 19-teens, which is where I would place this building.
And can we make the assumption that the interior is as good and as there's been financing to keep it up? Like if the people who live there and the people who owned the building kept it up, then they might be really as nice to live in as they are to look at.
Certainly.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. And of course, the challenge, I mean, this will take us in for 2 hours. The challenge is to come up with the funding to make sure that these things, of course, are preserved, because this is the beauty of the city. I was thinking, we can get to the next photo, but I was thinking that when you talk about the mix of architecture in one building, that's the diversity of the Bronx, of course.
Yeah.
That's who we are. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. This one, I know where this is. But look at the work on this. I mean, think about what it would cost to build a building with that beautiful architecture now. Go ahead, Joe. What do you got?
This is in University Place on University Heights, I should say, right below Fordham Road. And it's just something I found it completely by accident. I was walking around, and I went up one block, went down another, and I just it was there. It's a little off-centered, because the way the parking was in the area. I couldn't. I was trying to get the cars out. There was some construction going on around it, so that's all I could get of it. But it's an amazing sight.
It's just beautiful. Go ahead, Gregory. What do we got?
Well, I think the stepped gable parapet up there sort of gives it away as a neo-Dutch Renaissance style row house. But it also does incorporate Renaissance-inspired elements, such as the Roman arched doorway that's got the keystone in the middle. And then you've got this beautiful oriel on the second story, this copper oriel, which is just a feast for the eyes.
That's the one that's extended out from the it was like a little porch or a terrace. Must be lovely in there.
Yes, right? I would think so. Usually they have, seating area in that. Yeah.
Invite me. I'll get my book and I'll sit and read and get the sunlight. That would be spectacular.
Yes.
All right, let's keep going. We have more. Now, this one is, where is this one?
Bronx Park East below Pelham Parkway. I took it more just for the passageway than for anything else. Although the courtyard inside is very nice also.
Well, just
get that effect. The passageway and the light on the interior also.
It looks like a perfect entranceway to something spectacular. Like it really, and you captured it. The photograph. This may be my favorite one out of all the ones this year. I don't want to say that because I love the others, but this one's great.
I will, but it just as you said, the interior is very nice also, but just the look that tunnel made the whole thing for me.
All right, Gregory, when did we start building tunnels like this?
Well, this is really wonderful. I don't know if the tunnel is contemporaneous with the building behind it, right. But I would say that it really feels like a gateway, to this apartment building that appears to be designed in this Mediterranean revival style. There's a metaphor about the garden style apartments, of which, and I'm glad that Joe just alluded to the courtyard, because the landscaping and the gardens in these courtyards were integral to the experience and the appeal of these buildings. And part of this movement largely takes off in the 1920s in the Bronx. And essentially, it is a way of this design to induce people, to come to the Bronx. And of course, there's also a housing shortage during the interwar years. So this is really must have felt liberating to people that were living in more crowded conditions on the Lower East Side or in Yorkville before they
and the brilliance of Joe's photography is that it has that glow at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. And it really, Joe, I don't know if you played with the photograph afterwards, but it is just lovely.
Oh, I did. I always try a little bit to do something with it to add to it. I always say that it's what I'm trying to do is to do what I do if I'm still working using an enlarger in the darkroom to emphasize the light, emphasize the shading, emphasize the contrast. But I think with that as well, I think what happened with this is also that this probably followed the construction of the subway along White Plains Road, given the proximity to it.
I want Joe. I want to ask each of you this before we get to the next photo. how do you compare Bronx architecture and what you find in the Bronx to other neighborhoods in other boroughs? Is it distinctive, or do you say, well, the same era, different? Essentially, you're going to find something like that in Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan.
Well, to my feeling, is you find, but you find less of it. In the Bronx, to my feeling, there was always more emphasis on the architectural structure, the extra architectural touches.
Fascinating. Gregory, your thought on that?
No, I would say the same. Absolutely.
Wow. So we are as diverse as we think we are, architecturally even. All right, let's go to the next one. This alludes to the courthouse, to the courtyard situation that Gregory was talking about. Go ahead, Joe.
This is on the Grand Concourse up above Kingsbridge Road. This is one I took earlier this year. That was just I couldn't figure out what else to do with it because it was too big to get the whole building in it.
Well, but it's incredibly stately looking, and there's a building in front of it. I don't know if they're attached there, but it's very unusual. Gregory, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how this feels like, but isn't the apartment building behind the portal that we were just looking at, that tunnel.
Right.
This is in a Mediterranean revival style, but rather eclectic. And some of the hallmarks of the style you can see around the front entrance is this kind of rope motif, a twisted rope motif. And also you've got this Spanish clay tile on the roof. And then also along the roof line, you have this sort of scalloping, which is called matriculation or matriculated cornice, which is that brickwork that's arched like that repetitive arch.
And if you look at it really carefully up to the top of the thing that's in the front, there's like those vertical somethings, those little lines there. I mean, it again takes so much work. Nobody's making buildings like this anymore, Gregory, right?
No, it's really such a curiosity, but it feels a little Art Deco. Those two corbelled brick protrusions, for lack of a better word.
There you go. All right, next photo, ladies and gentlemen. We thank Rebecca and Stephen for working so hard for getting all this stuff together for us. Go ahead, Joe.
This is off of Pelham Parkway South. This is I think it's on Matthews Avenue. It was just something, a similar courtyard, just an amazing sight to see. And another building, I would try to get the whole thing in, just too much of the building. So I focused on the courtyard.
Well, we'll get you a crane for the next time, and you can stand off to the side. The thing about the towers in the front, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Gregory. My high school was Dewitt Clinton High School, and there's something about the majesty of those that reminds me somewhat of that architecture. But go ahead. You want to tell us about what you think about that Pelham Parkway building?
I mean, you would classify this as a neo-medieval style because it really has this sort of castle-like quality to it. Even down to the front wall, the low wall that is built with our native stone, the Manhattan schist, and then again this wonderful courtyard. So interesting that both this and the last one were both featured the same kind of plan in terms of the overall apartment house complex, which is again part of this garden style apartment development.
And again, the courtyards are just beautiful. And boy, I wish we could make buildings like that now. All right, we got time for two more, I think. You want to talk about buildings that were put down to match the streets. These kind of got that round appearance because the street is like that.
Right. This is on Gun Hill Road, across the street, West Gun Hill Road, across the street from Pelham, from the Van Cortlandt Park.
Right. I know exactly where it is.
Yeah. And it's just there are a couple of houses right before the intersection with Marshall Parkway as well. Mm-hmm. And it's like a lot of really nice apartment buildings over there like that.
Right. And go ahead, Joe.
And it takes advantage of the curvature of the street.
I was going to say the curved nature of the buildings is so interesting. It's like curved, but not curved in some spots. Go ahead, Gregory. What do you think?
Yeah, well, this is a building that I think really speaks to the extraordinary collection of Art Deco style buildings, apartment houses, in particular in the Bronx, more than any other in the country. I mean, really, the
Wow.
Bronx has the largest collection of this style of apartment house, which was built in a concentrated period between 1935 and 1941. And people wonder, well, how is it that these apartment houses were able to be developed during the Great Depression? And actually, there were government subsidies for home construction. And so there were developers that were basically filling in the voids. So whereas we have these other developments of the garden style apartments, you have occasional lots where you now see these Art Deco buildings that came maybe a decade later because of that subsidy and the demand for housing.
Let me just, I want to get to the last picture. The demand from housing exists to this day. We know that. That's another story. Let's do one more picture. This is West Marshallou Parkway, right, Joe?
That's right. By 204th Street, I think. It's just, there's some amazing buildings on both sides of the Marshallou Parkway. In my mind, the most beautiful street in the whole city.
Wow!
And it's just and what adds it's not just the parkland layout to the street, but it's also the type of housing that you have there.
You know, the rounded windows are just spectacular. So, Gregory, take about 30 seconds or 45 seconds and tell. Well, we're just running out of time. So, go ahead, tell us about that building on West Marshallou Parkway.
Well, we would call this built in the modern style, and which is a derivative of Art Deco. So this also fits squarely in the period of the preceding one that we just looked at, except with these curved corners. Also, look at the banding along the cornice line. All of this is suggestive of speed and, sleekness, which was really a bit more modest than Art Deco, not as razzy, mataz, but by the same token, part of the machine age.
And it to me, the windows, I think about living in there and what it must be like in that curved room, whatever it is, bedroom or living room, must be spectacularly comfortable. Anyway, gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to thank our friends at the Historic Districts Council. So if you are interested in learning more about the Historic Districts Council and their Bronx Borough Landmarks Preservation Committee, you got the website we're going to put up on the screen for you. And please email Diego Robayo, and you have his email address there on the screen. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Joe, when are you going out next? What's next? Tomorrow?
I'm not sure yet, Gary. It just depends what I feel like when I wake up in the morning.
And about how many photographs do you take each time you go out? I mean, do you take?
It varies wildly. It's usually about 20 or 30, or sometimes less, sometimes more.
And let's say for some of the ones we saw today, how many pictures of those buildings did you take before you said, "This is the one"?
Actually, in the case of these houses, this is the first one.
Wow!
If I take too many pictures of one building or another, it's not worth it. I have to think about it too much. I'd rather just go with the inspiration and see where it takes me.
Gregory, what your last words from you? What are you doing next? I know you're studying the architecture of our city.
Yes, and I also teach historic preservation. I teach a seminar at NYU that's going to be starting up soon, hopefully in person. We'll see what happens.
Great. Listen, Happy New Year to both of you. Joe, keep wandering in the Bronx. The other boroughs is not my problem. But you come to our borough and we'll be glad to take care of you. Happy and safe New Year's to you and, of course, to all our viewers. We appreciate you being with us on Bronxtalk. 2022 is around the corner, and we will see you every week then, just like we've done for the last 27 years. Good night.